In the mid-1970s, the peaceful town of Circleville, Ohio, was much like countless other small American communities. Neighbors knew one another, children rode school buses together, and life followed a familiar rhythm. Then the letters began. Anonymous, handwritten messages started arriving in mailboxes across town. They accused residents of secret affairs, corruption, domestic violence, and other deeply personal matters. Whoever wrote them seemed to know intimate details about people's lives. And before long, the entire town was living in fear. This became known as the Circleville Letters mystery.
One of the earliest and most frequent targets was school bus driver Mary Gillispie. She began receiving letters accusing her of having an affair with her school superintendent, Gordon Massey. The writer demanded that she confess and threatened to expose the alleged relationship if she did not. Soon, Mary's husband, Ron Gillispie, also began receiving threatening letters. The letters were unnerving not only because of their accusations, but because they contained details that seemed known only to someone close to the family. Residents began wondering, was someone watching them?
The anonymous writer did not stop with one family. Over time, hundreds of letters reached people throughout Circleville and surrounding communities. Teachers, government officials, business owners, ordinary families. No one seemed completely safe. The letters were written in distinctive block handwriting and often threatened to reveal private information unless recipients obeyed the writer's demands. Trust inside the community began to collapse. Neighbors suspected neighbors. Friendships ended. Even opening the mailbox became frightening.
In August 1977, Ron Gillispie received another disturbing communication. Shortly afterward, he left his home carrying a handgun and drove away. Not long afterward, his vehicle crashed into a tree, and he died. Authorities ruled the death an accident after concluding his gun had discharged inside the vehicle. However, because of the threatening letters and the unusual circumstances surrounding his final hours, many residents questioned whether there was more to the story. The case became even more mysterious.
Several years later, in 1983, Mary discovered another anonymous message attached to a roadside sign along her school bus route. When she removed the sign, she noticed it had been attached to a box. Inside was a loaded handgun rigged as a booby trap that could have fired when someone tried to remove the sign. Investigators traced the gun to Mary's brother-in-law, Paul Freshour. He was arrested, convicted of attempted murder, and sentenced to prison. Many people believed the mystery had finally been solved. They were wrong.
Even after Paul Freshour was imprisoned, the anonymous letters continued appearing. Some were postmarked while he was incarcerated. According to reports, prison officials even placed Freshour under close supervision at times because of complaints that he was still sending letters, but the letters kept arriving. This created one of the biggest mysteries in the case. If Paul was the writer, how were the letters still being mailed? If he wasn't, then who was?
Over the decades, countless theories have emerged. Some believe Paul Freshour was responsible for at least part of the campaign. Others think there were multiple writers. Some suspect someone deeply connected to the local community who knew everyone's private lives. No theory has ever explained every detail. Even handwriting experts have disagreed about whether all of the letters came from the same person.
The letters reportedly continued for years before eventually fading away in the early 1990s. By then, hundreds of anonymous messages had been mailed. Marriages had been damaged. Reputations destroyed. Families divided. And an entire town had learned what it felt like to believe someone was constantly watching.
To this day, law enforcement has never conclusively identified the person, or people, responsible for the full Circleville letter campaign. Paul Freshour maintained his innocence regarding being the anonymous letter writer until his death, and no definitive evidence has ever resolved the broader mystery.
The Circleville letters were more than anonymous mail. They became a weapon. A campaign of fear carried out with paper, ink, and secrets. For nearly 2 decades, someone appeared to know too much about too many people. Then, almost as mysteriously as they began, the letters stopped. No confession. No proven author. Only hundreds of envelopes. A town forever changed. And one of America's most unsettling unsolved mysteries, where the greatest weapon wasn't a gun or a knife. It was the fear that someone knew your darkest secrets before you did.